this year in 2022, they expect over $1 billion to be spent on turkeys, which if you and I, or if the listeners go back to October, billions are spent on candy, billions are spent on costumes, and now over $1 billion on turkeys.
On turkeys.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Hello to our listeners and welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy. I'm Eric Seemann, realtor with Keller Williams Heritage in San Antonio, Texas, and I am here with my sister,
Donna Reed, and I am with Keller Williams Southern Arizona in Tucson.
In this podcast, we reflect and reminisce on how our life and upbringing in the small village of Lindsey, Ohio impacted our lives and careers in real estate in the Southwest states we each now call home. We worked to connect what made the two houses we both lived in with our parents and brothers and the two additional houses where Donna raised her family decades later so influential in our careers. We have learned that our nostalgic conversations certainly take a lot of turns during any episode. And in the end, we hope we will be successful in providing you expert knowledge of our markets while we share some history, statistics, or simply information about the local real estate market you may not be aware of. So, Donna, how about providing the listeners who may have missed it what we discussed last episode and what we're going to discuss today?
So, Eric, we took a little turn last month and decided to really focus on the nostalgia of October and fall. And so our first episode was predominantly about what we remembered about Lindsey and trick or treat and Halloween parties and hay rides and all of those good things. And who gave out the best candy where, those important things.
Those important things as a kid.
Yeah, that you remember. And then in our second episode, we kind of compared and contrasted to what happens now in San Antonio and in Tucson from the perspective of the way Halloween contests take place and trunk or treat. And because you and I both now live in an area where Dia de los Muertos is celebrated, we touched on that a little bit too, and the celebration that takes place that way.
All right, just bravo. Your linguistics showed there that you're far better than I am. In your pronunciation of Dia de los Muertos.
My pronunciations. And so now it's November. And as we come into this month, it's funny, you and I both were talking about, dang, how do we remember Halloween so well? But what are our memories of our childhood Thanksgiving? So I literally had to call and ask Dan, and, he kind of laughed because he's like, you're calling me for a memory because I'm not good at all.
And Dan, our oldest brother, is the one we have to go to as the eldest in the family now, who may have the best memories from when we were both still too little.
Yeah, and he's he justified and acknowledged that what I thought happened. So you're 9 years younger than Dan, 7 years younger than me, right? And
right.
As a result, our holidays in Lindsey changed through time. So when you were really little and I was, 10, 11, 12, I can't even remember how old, we would go to Grandpa and Grandma Seemann's house in Northeast Ohio. So where my dad grew up. I say grandpa, although grandpa had passed away. I don't remember anything prior to that.
1968. Yeah, he and Grandma Torsberg both passed the same year, but different. And of course, I was only 3.
Right. So
no memory of either one of them.
Yeah. So we would drive to the farm. And unlike many of the Lindsey people who listen to this, we didn't have other family in Lindsey. So we had to leave town to go meet up with relatives, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we'd go to Grandma's and we'd be there about 20 minutes. And then I would want to go to our cousins because it was way more fun at our cousins.
I do remember on some of those drives now, maybe it wasn't specifically Thanksgiving, but Dad, even as a kid, it infuriated me that we had to take all the rural country roads. and not just get on the turnpike and get there. But Dad's frugal nature, we weren't going to pay for anything extra. Now, 55 years later, I take the rural roads and stay off the interstates because I can't stand the traffic.
Well, there is that. I think Dad did it more because he was kind of cheap, but we would get on somewhere after Clyde, Ohio, instead of
wasn't it over near
Norwalk?
Man, okay, Bell Fountain, Bucyrus?
No, that's south. That's
south.
Fountain.
Where was it then that
Bellevue?
Bellevue. The other B word.
Yeah.
And Bucyrus, just for anybody who doesn't know that name, you'll look at it and you'll go, that's Bucky Russ.
That's funny. Yeah. So we would drive, and I did know the turnpike exit numbers at that point, and that's all changed over the years. Now it's based on the mileage, so it's not the same number. But we would get to the farm, and we would have fun at the farm for a little while. And you and I talked about the games. What were our options? We had
we had a choice of really one thing to play with. Grandma did not have any volume of toys saved for us. She had dominoes. And they were a half-gallon milk carton
filled with dominoes.
The top was torn open, and that was the domino thing. And in order to play with them, because the only smooth place to play is we take her footstool or ottoman, flip it over because it was flat on the bottom side.
So
and you could set them up there.
Yeah, because of contoured carpet back then.
Oh, right? And I did remember one other thing that we used to use to play. Remember, she had that audio travel the world set that she had gotten. Did you ever remember playing that? It was a book. It was an audio record that we could put on the turntable, and it had pictures, so it would walk you through a tour of Italy or a tour of France. And
wow.
I didn't call Ken because he and I used to, and I don't know when she got it. It seems to me like it would have been sold like an Encyclopedia Britannica kind of thing, some door-to-door salesman.
That's kind of fascinating, considering I don't know if they ever went anywhere. Grandma used to watch us when Mom and Dad would take trips later in life, but did Grandpa and Grandma Seemann ever go anywhere? I don't know. Mississippi.
Not according to the one journal that we had. that one journal, which we're going to get at some point. We're going to find that from the stack of stuff that we
that we need to go through. So we would go to Grandma's and Grandpa's, and then Thanksgiving Day at that point was held down at our Uncle Bill's, our dad's brother, and our cousin's
older
house.
brother.
Yeah, older brother. And they had a split level, like a tri-level house, and there was way more space. And then they had cousins on the other side of the family. So Dan reminded me that we kids would all be down in the basement. They had a pool table. They had fun stuff. Yeah.
That basement was huge.
They had a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. They had a full kitchen down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Anna could make, a whole second. I'd forgotten they had a kitchen. Wow. Anyway,
when you came down the stairs, right? You'd come down the stairs and immediately there at the right before you went out to where the pool table was.
The floor plan of the house.
Or the ping pong room with the...
Yeah. So then as the years go by, you and I, what we both really remember is after I had moved away and moved back and had the kids and you were in college, and we would get together at the church workers' home or parish house, as we called it. So
yes.
Yeah. Which for the listeners that don't have anything idea of what we're talking about, Lindsey, Ohio was, again, a population of about 500. And the workers' home was catty corner from where our parents lived, but had much more space. So Eric, you want to share a little bit about...
Yeah, now if anybody's listening to that and has listened to a previous episode when we talked about being catty corner from the Smith's house, and then the church and the church parking lot being catty corner from each other, it's like, how can you be catty corner from the workers' home? Because we sat on two streets and an alley, and we were catty corner across the alley, right? So was the workers' home. And I mean, we grew up, there still were some elderly ladies who did the quilting and would go over there and quilt on a weekly basis as a social activity and quilting. Any major church events where we needed place for food, and we were raised Methodist, so you had to bring a covered dish or a potluck.
Yep.
There were lots and lots and lots of potlucks that were held over there at the church and at the workers' home. And honestly, from there, your second life in Lindsey led to the creation of the attached fellowship hall. Right. Yeah. You were instrumental in.
Yeah, that was happening. But when you and I were talking, it's funny the memories that we have. So as you were in college and you came back one year with college roommates from other countries and things like that.
And other states. I brought my friends in from Rochester, New York.
You had friends from Rochester?
I had Rochester, New York. Yeah. Rodney was in Drew Macon. Was one of my college buddies. He's the one who gave me my famous nickname, which will go unmentioned.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But, which to this day is the nickname that is.
What's interesting as we reflect on this is that Aunt Mary Lou and Uncle Barry, who lived in Rochester, they would come, and Uncle Barry's parents lived just up at Catawba Island. So as the years went by, they would come, they would pick up his parents, and they would all come for Thanksgiving at the parish house. And then the next generation started coming. And so that's the only reason some of the second cousins know each other. But my funniest memory about all that is that Uncle Barry's mom, Carol, would always bring wine from Catawba
Island.
Pretty sure we weren't supposed to have wine at the church hall at all. So this might be a confession. And I hope that 35 years later or 40, I don't get arrested. I'm not even sure I ever liked that wine. I'm not even sure I drank the wine, but there was always a bottle of wine. Because Carol and Carter were there, and it allowed us the space, but also it was close enough to run home. So if there was some utensil missing or a pan missing that we needed,
really, really convenient to go, oh, I forgot this, go get it.
Yeah. So besides all that, we also talked about the food being really sort of typical. So I'm going to lean to the side for those of you that are going to watch this online, and you're going to see a plate: mashed potatoes, dressing, sweet potatoes, green beans, and cranberries. Pretty much what we would have. And what did we talk about with the cranberries? It was in a can, right? We never had.
Okay, yeah. We did not have cranberries that looked like that. We had the Libby's cranberry jelly that would come out and slice it, which honestly is still something I serve. It's like, okay, someone's got to go get the cranberries. And thinking about this, there are several favorite episodes and even Christmas songs where people run to the store to get the cranberries that they forgot. It's like, oh, you forgot the cranberries.
Right.
Mad About You is one of my favorite Thanksgiving episode of tea. And yeah, I think they were down at the store 4 times.
Well, okay. So now talking about the cranberries, then we can go back. And so just before the podcast, we were talking about how many turkeys will be sold. So just a minute or two of research says that 80% of whole turkeys are sold in the month of November. So all the rest of the year, people buy sliced turkey, people buy turkey breasts, but it's Thanksgiving that we get the whole turkey, right? This year in 2022, they expect over $1 billion to be spent on turkeys, which if you and I, or if the listeners go back to October, billions are spent on candy, billions are spent on costumes, and now over $1 billion on turkeys.
On turkeys. On the bird. So one of the things I did as we were preparing for this, because unusually you went through and researched and picked up how many turkeys are going to be sold and the amount being spent. I went back further because we always try to work in some history and pulled in some Thanksgiving facts from a couple of different history sites. So the first harvest festival, we give credit to the Plymouth colony or the Plymouth plantation, the Pilgrims who came across on the Mayflower. It happened in 1621. They were celebrating a plentiful harvest from that year, 1621. They had arrived in 1620, and more than half the colonists had died that first winter. So they figure, based on 2 accounts, essentially, the governor and one member of the colony who created a journal, that there were 22 men, only 4 women survived because 78% of the women had passed away. Wow. And 25 children and teens. So just over 50 colonists had survived to that point. The local Native American or indigenous peoples were the Wampanoag, and there were about 90 of them. And according to the governor's directive or the governor's journal, he sent people out to go, as they referred, a-fowling. As in hunting, looking for birds.
Looking for a bird.
Looking for birds. And we think turkey, because that he discusses that turkey was plentiful. Not necessarily that that's what they ate. It was just as likely that they had duck, geese, swan, maybe some pigeon. They know that according to what's documented, the natives brought venison. They probably also were hunting and had rabbit and squirrel. Lots of seafood. They probably figured that lobster, mussels, and eel were part of it. Corn was there. But corn was not managed the same way since they were learning from the natives. The corn was removed from the cob. It was soaked in water. It was turned into a porridge, and a porridge with clams or mussels in it.
So it was a plethora of protein.
It was a plethora of protein.
Unlike
However,
the plethora of carbs that we have now.
What they didn't have is they didn't have wheat. Mm-hmm. They had already used up their stores of sugar and flour that they had brought with them. So there was nothing to make any kind of bread or anything with. Corn was the starch, and potatoes that we have didn't show up in the colonies till decades later because it was actually brought across. It's a southern food and was brought across by the Spanish and the Portuguese colonies back to Europe, and they hadn't made their way back over to the United States.
Wow.
So also blueberries, plums, grapes, gooseberries, and of course cranberries. But again, cranberries were raw cranberries. They didn't start cooking them and adding sugar for another 50 years.
Wow.
And then finally, it was not designated as an official holiday, Thanksgiving, until October 3rd of 1863 by Abraham Lincoln.
I was going to say just around the Civil War.
So
interesting.
242 years after the original event in 1621.
Wow.
And I'm going to read this because I pulled up a couple of excerpts from his proclamation. Now, It's a couple of paragraphs. Okay. So it says, the year that is drawing toward its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added, which are of so extraordinary a nature that they cannot fail to penetrate and soften the heart, which is habitually insensible to the ever-watchful providence of Almighty God. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gift of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. It seemed to me fit and proper that we should solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledge, as one heart and one voice by the whole American people, I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea, and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens.
Wow. I should get that and send it to my book club and stuff. That's pretty cool. We forget. Even if we ever learned it, we forget. And
we study the Gettysburg Address.
Yeah.
We don't study inaugural speeches. We know that every politician nowadays has a professional speechwriter. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Multiple professional speechwriters.
Right.
And teleprompter and everything else. And this is an age when the Gettysburg Address was scrawled on something while he was on the train and the president did it. And this, just as articulate, was impressive.
Cool. Yeah. So we've talked about the food, and I know that our time is probably, waning here. And behind you, you set up your...
those are my two Thanksgiving decorations. My
that
little
picture, one of my favorite pictures of
made
Mom, and what's it say behind it? What's your chalkboard behind it?
All because two people came together.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, wedding pictures up above that.
Yeah. The other thing that you and I talked about just a little bit was the fact that in school, starting with like kindergarten or something, people would often, and I'm holding my hand up for those of you watching, and you would put your hand and you would either paint it or draw around it and cut it. And it would be the turkey and the turkey feathers on the head. And that was like an art project when we were little, and many, many people. But you also reminded me about doing the Reader's Digest, which I bet there's a whole generation that doesn't even know what Reader's Digest
even know what a Reader's Digest is, or a TV, when a TV guide was small enough that you could do it.
Oh, that's right. It was TV
fold
guide.
It back, create kind of a folded body segment, paint that somehow, and then put your hand feathers. Wow.
Yeah, can't do that.
Put your hand feathers on it with like a popsicle stick head on the turkey, and that was a decoration and sat out for years.
And plays at school, and it's become something in our country for those of us who grew up only hearing our side of the story to learn more about the Native Americans and the indigenous people. And I have to tell you, after having lived in Tucson now for 22 years, there's way more conversation about this than there ever was living in Lindsey, Ohio, right?
Sure.
We know that there's cities and counties and places in every state that are named after tribes. We just do. We know they were Native American words. For me here to know how many in the state of Arizona tribes there still are, and to see how they celebrate and what they make. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that next time. But I think that it's fascinating. We all had pilgrims. We may or may not have Native Americans. And if we did, we had this image of them that we grew up with. May or may not have been correct. But it was
may or may
something.
not have been entirely accurate.
Cowboy Western.
Done some additional history research for future episodes. And part of this was based on the flood of 1959 that moved you out of Fremont.
Fremont to Lindsey. Yeah.
And it turns out that area that mom and dad lived in there on that side of the river, which would have been the east side of the
Avenue.
river, right? The east side of the river was originally known before Fremont, before Upper Sandusky. It was Croghanville. And I will share some of that more in a future episode.
Interesting. Learning about that. So, well, what do you think? Think we've covered it all? Are we ready to wrap it up?
I think we're good for this one. Let's wrap this one up, bring it to a close. Conclude this episode. What language do we want to use?
Whatever those words are. Thanks, you guys, for listening again and joining us, because you can tell that we do take a stroll down memory lane, and we try to remember as much as we can about our childhood and our youth in Lindsey, Ohio, and how it impacted us and our careers in real estate. We hope, and our goal is that we will educate you a little bit. Maybe it's history about Thanksgiving, and maybe it's about real estate where we live and work right now, and how the lifestyle that we grew up with has changed to where we live now. If you're in Arizona, specifically, I'm in Tucson, and Eric is in Texas and San Antonio. We are both realtors with Keller Williams, and we're to help you find the perfect property for your family so that you too can find a home and create lasting memories. If you're anywhere across the United States or actually across the world, we have an extensive network, and we can help you find real estate advisors wherever you might be living. And we're happy to make those connections for you. Closing things up, remember, it may be simple, but it ain't always easy. And until next time, I'm Donna.
And I'm Eric.
And we are
Real Siblings.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Thank you for investing your valuable time to listen to Real Siblings. It ain't easy. Eric and Donna hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast. Please take time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes below with all their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and websites. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.